This week, we continue our look at Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, the newest addition to 5e Dungeons & Dragons.
And this week, we're looking at the subclass, the Artillerist.
Hello, this is the DMD. Let us tell you about our Teespring store. We have loads of awesome logo wear for you to purchase and show your support for the DMD. Your purchases help the podcast out a lot. It provides us with funds necessary to keep the podcast running, and it puts our brand out there so others can discover our podcast as well.
Additionally, and while I cannot confirm this myself, I have been told that wearing DMD logo wear will grant a +2 bonus to your charisma. Head on over to our Teespring store at teespring.com/stores/the Dungeon Masters Dojo and get yourself some DMD swag. Let your friends and everyone else know you're a student at the dojo.
As a thank you to our listeners, we're offering a 15% discount on all items in our shop from now until the end of January. Just use code THEDMD, all caps, all one word. Thanks for listening.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Dungeon Masters Dojo podcast. This is a show for game masters and players alike. We hope to bring you tips and tricks to elevate your game and develop the art of dungeon mastery. I'm your host, Louis Aponte, and these are your dungeon masters, Scott Labby and Bill Robitaille. Let's enter the dojo and see what they have in store for us today. Hey, Scott. Hey, Bill.
What's up, Lou?
Not
How
much.
are you?
Guess we're going over the Artillerist again.
More Tasha's stuff.
Or more Tasha's.
More Tasha stuff.
Yep, more of Tasha. Before we get started, I am going to do a shout-out.
Shout away.
Shout away.
All right, so back on Monday, December 14th, we got an email from Doug. I'm not going to say your last name, Doug, but Doug paid us a very nice compliment. He's a listener. And Doug, you are our first, I don't know, fan mail or something?
Genuine fan mail, yeah.
Yeah. So we do appreciate the kind words in there, but Doug disagreed.
Gasp.
Doug disagreed with our take on the Artificer, and I'm going to quote Doug, I think you were a bit unfair in your appraisal of the Artificer class. So we went ahead and, we got together. We're like, we need to email Doug just to let him know that we're listening, and we appreciate his feedback and any other feedback we get. And we went back and, as promised, and we did a little reading on there. And without getting too much into Doug's email, Doug, I think we were a little unfair. So on several of your points, I stand corrected, as do my colleagues. But your opinions and your insights into this class, the Artificer, are very much so appreciated and valuable. So, keep it up.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I mean, despite the fact that I'm the hard-nosed guy usually, you did bring up some very, very valid points, and we do appreciate it.
And we appreciate hearing from you guys. Agree with us, disagree with us. It doesn't really matter. Email us. Feel free to do that. We want to hear from you.
Yeah, we just like the fact that you're listening.
Well, it's also good we can have a discussion about it. To Doug's point, maybe we were a little bit unfair, but I think we were just taking everything from the viewpoint from our world, and in our world, what we kind of said was how we feel. In our world, I think the Artificer class in general, only because of some of the things he could do if somebody really wanted to power metagame, if he wanted to, could really hurt a campaign.
Yeah, and I think that's what to piggyback off on what Lou was saying. These are our opinions. So our opinions may differ from yours, and our interpretations certainly will differ. So I don't want anybody to. We've been playing for a really long time, and we've been running for a really long time. But that doesn't mean that we are experts.
Oh, hell no.
Just
far from
experienced.
Yes, very experienced.
And we could be wrong, and we can misinterpret. And I think or we could just interpret the way we do so, and that's how the game goes. Usually, I mean, you bounce around from one group to another, and their interpretations of things may be a little different than yours. And this is not to detract from what Doug was saying, because Doug's points were all very valid. They were correct in a lot of cases.
But in our defense, on that first episode of Tasha's, I think we were half in a bottle, I will say, if you guys remember.
We were nipple deep in
Suntory Toki we had.
And it was good. Highly recommended to those over 21 years of age who will drink responsibly.
Please.
But yes, thank you, Doug, for your feedback. Thank you for reaching out to us and taking the time to engage with us. We do appreciate it. We are very flattered and very happy to have gotten the email. Very happy.
Very happy.
I have something to say.
What else is new?
The hell with you guys. I'm never wrong. My word is law. Okay, let's move on.
We're still working on those things with Bill.
We let him believe he's right all the time.
What's that? I couldn't hear you.
My ears are bad. I didn't say anything.
Okay, the Artillerist. Let there be cannon.
Not fodder. Just cannon.
Just cannon. Magic-powered cannon. Uses to hurl energy projectiles and explosives upon the battlefield or any other unsuspecting or very suspecting recipients of your generous gifts.
Yes. Why don't we go start off with their spell list that they get first?
Yeah. Okay. Spell list. 3rd level. Shield. Thunderwave.
My favorite.
That's why you wanted to start. There you go. Right there. Black and white. Thunderwave. 5th, Scorching Ray and Shattered.
Another of my favorites.
9th, Fireball Wind Wall. 13th, Ice Storm Wall of Fire. And 17th, Cone of Cold Wall of Force. Okay, this is an impressive little piece of ornament.
It is. The Ice Storm, I don't know how it fits in with the theme, but it's a lot of this stuff is like beautiful for battlefield stuff. It's
I think that Ice Storm could still fit for controlling the battlefield.
Controlling thematically, I was wondering how it would fit, but certainly, yeah. Battlefield control, yeah. That the Ice Storm.
Well, movement more than anything else. Ice Storm would be absolutely perfect for movement, especially in large areas.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of while Bill was going over this list, I was thinking of the flashback scenes in the original Terminator. Where they were showing like all the machines, rolling over like the piles of skulls and the explosions and everything. And I just see a bunch of artillerists in the wings doing that, along with their armor companions. We may have to throw those into that campaign we put together last week.
Yeah. As I was reading through this, it's like, if you've listened to our last episode, you know exactly what I feel about guns and cannons. But I have 2 applications where I think this would fit very, very well. The entire subclass. First, if your campaign is revolving around a keep or a hold or a castle, and you need to siege the castle, or you need to protect against the siege of your castle, this would be very, very handy. Trebuchets are so large and clunky when you can just put this in a 5-foot square and move it wherever you want.
I'm going to say that if you have castles, I'm going to go out on a limb and say if you have castles in your D&D campaign, yeah, you should ask yourself why. Right? With dragons flying around and wizards with fireball.
Yeah.
What good's a castle? You're going to spend a ton of money and a ton of labor just for some party member to come by and fireball your castle walls or thunderwave it. Minas Tirith survived. Minas Tirith did survive, but I didn't see anybody throwing around a lot of heavy duty spells, and the fell beasts, they were more like salamanders with wings.
Yeah.
Than the dragons. I think the Middle Earth was kind of a low powered world.
Yeah, very much.
As far as magic goes. But that's a topic for a whole other episode.
Yeah, we'll get to that
feelings
later.
on castles and keeps.
But, I mean, I can see the castles. The other place I can see this fitting, this whole subclass, is on ships.
Yeah.
battleships.
Protect the ship.
Broadside to broadside. The old Spanish-American War type deal. High-masted ships with a couple artillerists on there because it has shields spells. It has spells that also help fortify and for the people that are around it. So I can see these in those two particular places. Anywhere else, I have a tough time fitting these in, and that's just me.
No, I remember when I did the warehouse, you had a hard time with that because I had what they were called metalhead gnomes at the time because they had the mechs there.
Right.
They were sort of like the armorers, and you had a hard time with that as well.
Yes, I did.
Yep.
The issue I have, and this is merely being an old grognard and not being fond of too much change, is I grew up on a more of a fantasy, like a medieval fantasy D&D setting.
Mm-hmm.
Where it just didn't seem to fit in. And now that sounds weird. If anybody's familiar with old D&D, there was it was more pulpy than it was Lord of the Rings.
Oh, it was very pulpy.
And there were a lot of elements of science fiction, and Psionics speaks to that. And I wish I could remember what the name of the module is. I should probably email Dave Wiley over at Retro RPG Reviews.
Oh,
because
he'll know it a heartbeat.
I bet you he would know.
It's like a flipping encyclopedia.
There was something where you found a crashed spaceship. It was a module from like AD&D, and for the life of me, I can't.
Actually, a lot of the early modules I noticed drove a very long-term post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, there was that vibe, wasn't there?
At one of them gave a description, and it sounded like a helicopter, and cockpit and whatnot, as a small apparatus from the old times, and the blades that were on top, and it's like the more you read it, it was very, very couched in nuance and what. But I mean, after you read it, going, that sounds like they're describing an old dilapidated helicopter that's been grown over. I mean, so the early editions of D&D were very post-apocalyptic.
They were almost akin to Terry Brooks's Shannara novels a little bit,
Yes.
I think you're talking about Expedition to Barrier Peaks.
Yes, I think so.
The Greyhawk.
Yeah. And I was trying to think of what world it was. I'm still gonna email Dave. I haven't watched any of his videos that dealt with that, so I'm gonna have to go through his catalog and then request he do that, because that was one of my favorites. But yeah, it was Greyhawk. Greyhawk was the post. I was trying to think of what that apocalyptic kind of world was, and it was Greyhawk. One of my favorites. That was a Gary Gygax thing, because I remember having the Gazetteer, which was very it was very much so like medieval Europe, and it was very well done. Nowadays, if you pick that up off the shelf, you'd be like, I'm not paying any money for this. This is this isn't even done, because they would give you enough information to play in the world, but not so much that you couldn't make it your own, which I think is kind of a big failing nowadays. But we just got way off topic. Way off topic. So this Artillerist, I think you would certainly see these guys and these gals on a ship.
That's it. I seen two of them, but the one that immediately came to mind was on giant masted ships. The
or
old,
like an ironclad,
or something along those lines. But broadside to broadside, let's lob some magical cannon fire at each other, and the trick is not to sink it. If you sink it, you get hucked overboard. We want to be able to keep the ship and the crew and what's below in the holds. So it's also a good way to keep them from going absolutely ballistic on you and wreaking absolute destruction, being threatened with being hucked overboard with their cannon and saying, well, you just ruined tens of thousands of gold pieces or credits for us because you sank it. We told you not to sink it. Keeps them from going murder hobo on you. Yeah, it all kicks in at third level with the Eldritch Cannon. You're creating magic cannons, woodworking tools, and smith tools. You use an action to magically create a small or tiny Eldritch Cannon. Doesn't matter what size. It has the same AC. It does the same damage. You can put legs on these things so they can move themselves.
Oh, yeah, I've been doing some theory crafting for this one.
I was reading, it's like, wow, you could put as many legs as you want on it as long as there's at least two and it doesn't change, just more theatrics than anything else. But yeah, put legs on it to move it around and here, come here, boy.
Yeah, and the more I read about, because this was like my third go around with the Artificer, and not counting the Doug rereading. And Doug did bring up a valid point where we were like, the expertise bit takes away from rogues and bards, and the more I read it, the more I'm like, yeah, I get it. If you're going to build cannons and stuff like that and armor, you want to be an expert at your craft, and it's just with the tools, but the bard and the rogue kind of get it with
skills.
Yeah, with like pretty much anything they want to, any skill they want to put it in.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah, it's a valid point, and the more and more I read and read and read and read.
He obviously read it more often than we did. Him and his players.
Or he paid closer attention, which is entirely possible as well.
Maybe a combination of the both.
Yeah, I mean, just to craft a firearm in a world where this sort of technology may not be prevalent, or to craft something as fine as that, some exemplary weapon, like the arcane firearm, certainly a much more elegant weapon than a flintlock.
True. I like the, if you're going to use a cannon, at least it can do multiple things because you can craft different kinds. A flamethrower, the ballista is basically your cannon fire, and does a protector, which is kind of cool. You get your cannon that actually gives you a 1d8 plus your intelligence modifier within a 10-foot area with temporary hit points. That's actually pretty cool. So the cannon doesn't just do damage; it can actually protect the group as well.
Yeah, and I like that. I like that you get. I mean, you're using your intelligence. You're getting some benefit out of that, because I remember when and you almost wanted to have a high intelligence because it granted you extra languages.
Yep.
And in the old days of D&D and a couple other features.
Well, as your wizards, it gave you more spells too.
Yeah, it did. And that was really important to having a potent wizard.
Mm-hmm.
And now it almost seems like it's kind of like the dump stat, is the intelligence
for a lot of classes.
Yeah, for a lot of classes. Certainly not, the wizard, but back in the old days, you got a lot from your intelligence. So it's nice to see that intelligence is being utilized by a class, and certainly
not being relegated to the dump stat.
Yeah, which is a shame, and I'm guilty of dumping my intelligence too. No jokes, please. I saw Lou lean towards the microphone.
I'll be nice.
That's a treat, huh?
Well, charisma used to be the dump stat too, and now your warlock and your sorcerer, that's where your bard.
Yep.
They get all their spells out of there. So you don't. It's tough to find a dump stat anymore.
Yeah, they're making it more and more difficult, which is a good thing.
That's a good thing. Yeah,
I think that's all class dependent, really.
Yeah.
Oh, very much. Yeah.
And there's nothing that says you can't have an intelligent fighter.
Oh, by no means. Yeah.
You want to have the physicality be up to par. So it's almost really your dump stat is probably going to end up being intelligence.
I like playing the intelligent fighter.
I don't even know what to say to it.
We're both dumbfounded. We're just staring at you going, I got nothing for that.
That is not true at all.
Left us
so
speechless.
you get your arcane firearm, and you're using a wad, staff, or rod.
Wand.
Wand, staff, or rod.
You said wad.
Wad.
No more for you.
Wand, staff, or rod to make your firearm.
Would you like a bit more, Bill?
I would love some, thank you. Continue.
He just derailed me. I'll have to cut this part out.
No, we're going to leave it in. Yeah, same thing. Sigils will appear on the object. I like the arcane firearm. Again, in certain areas. I can see this being used a little bit more widely, where you have a wand, a staff, a rod. You don't see a whole lot of rods of anything anymore. Wands and staffs, sure. but you takes that and turns it into an arcane firearm. That's not too bad, especially if you have something that uses charges.
Wand, staff, or rod used to be a saving throw.
Yes, it did.
Yes, that
years ago. Yeah.
Yep.
And there were a lot of rods floating around.
Oh,
out
there was
there.
a
rod of lordly might.
Oh, everyone wanted everyone wanted
remember.
that one. Yeah. Oh, that's good, Lou. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You can use this firearm as your spell casting focus for your artificer spells. And again, when you're using these objects as your focus, flavor them up.
Oh yeah.
Just don't say I'm casting like fireball. It's like, describe it. Where's the fireball coming from? Do you have like 4 or 5 different barrels and you got a fireball barrel, that it's kind of coming through? Is there
every spell has a different effect. So it's like, all right, sparks start sparking out the end
That's
of the
how I
barrel.
envision it, yeah.
And you hear this hissing sound, and all of a sudden a high pitched whine starts building up, and all of a sudden, boom. Like a mortar, you hear this deep thump, and you feel it in your chest as it lobs it out there.
I'm thinking like something like a full-sized freight train cruising down like the barrel of your gun until the fireball erupts from the other end.
There you
and
go.
There being this like shrieking noise, like when the Yamato used the wave motion gun.
Yes.
And just wreaking havoc and destruction on whatever, as is customary with a fireball.
Yeah, build it up.
Yeah, make it fun.
I'm casting fireball. Boring.
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
Role play it, babe. Role play it.
Flavor.
That's it. Explosive cannon. Your cannon does another D8 damage, which is pretty cool. It's basically your next grade up. The feature of this one, it seems interesting. As an action, you can command the cannon to detonate if you're within 60 feet of it.
This is what I like about it.
Doing so destroys the cannon and forces each creature within 20 feet to make a dex save or take 3d8 force damage on a failed, half as much on it. Okay, abandon ship. Just make sure we're within 60 feet. Is the captain over there looking at that funky new cannon? Great. Captain, say boom.
Yeah, and that's a sizable chunk of damage too. Of course, if I were rolling the dice, I'd probably do a whole 3 or maybe even 4 points of damage.
Oh, I'd give you all the way up to 6.
Yeah, you think so? I don't know. My rolls on like digital dice.
Senior citizen discount.
Bad, yes.
Yeah, that's a cool feature. It does more damage, but okay, you need to leave it behind. All right, leave it behind. As soon as it's destroyed, you can just cast another one.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'd want a self-destruct countdown too, just to make it.
Well, like I said,
fun.
I was theory crafting this at around 9th level, and I was like, this would be amazing when you have it go off.
Yeah, little magic mouth. 10, 9, 8, 7. Is this good? 3.
Just like the looks on the Klingons' faces when they boarded the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Yep.
Boom. Fortified position. Master at forming a well-defended emplacement using your Eldritch Cannon. This is another really interesting. You and your allies have half cover within 10 feet of the cannon. You created Eldritch Cannon. As a result of the shimmering field of magical protection that the cannon emits, that's got to look cool.
Yep.
I mean, it's 15th level, but it's still got to look cool.
Yeah. You're kind of in a foxhole and taking heavy fire, and you pop up that kind of weird shimmery, like blue or purple or pink or whatever color you want, like on a force field, and shit's just bouncing off it.
Every time it does, you get the rippling effects,
yeah.
the shimmering rippling effects, because you got to have the shimmering ripple effects. And you can have 2 cannons at the same time, one to either side of you. Make sure they're at least 55 feet apart.
Now, imagine. No, they could be ready. Oh, to blow up. Yeah, but imagine having 2 flamethrowers crossing over somebody. That's 68 you can potentially do damage with.
Right.
Before you even do
Yeah, because that was a 15-foot cone. So,
Yep.
you put these things about 30 feet across, and you point them at that nexus point right in front of you. That's a world of ouchie.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
I got a question. How would you use this class?
This is something that I would probably use in a post-apocalyptic fantasy setting. I think it would be out of place anywhere else, like in a high fantasy type setting.
I don't think these would fit very well in high fantasy. I agree.
But I can see them being like an integral part of a post-apocalyptic type of thing. Like, what if just throwing it out there, what if there was a need for this type of technology? Technology's developed, kind of based on need. We need to do this, or we need to do that. Yes,
and then they're bastardized for weapons.
Yeah. But what if these were specifically designed? We have to combat something. What if the world was overtaken by vampires or illithids? What if the illithids finally succeeded in blotting out the sun? Right? You're going to need all sorts of magical stuff to combat like these illithid armies. And now you have these artificers. The artificer class, kind of their profession comes to be based on the need for these weapons. So the artificers are the ones that are kind of the heroes of the day. So you have the artillerist who's controlling the battlefield. They're taking out massive numbers of like illithid forces, whoever they may be.
The thought eaters, wave of thought eaters out in front of them.
And they're doing it at a distance because you don't want them to get too close. But the landscape of the world would be like just a wreck, charred trees and destroyed buildings. It would be a very dark and bleak kind of fantasy world where you're fighting against these overlords that are pretty much in a more secure and solid and winning position than you are.
My artificer is going to be named Neo.
So with that type of world, how would you build your artificer? Because I already have an idea for how I would do it.
It depends on what artificer I was building, but if I was doing an artillerist,
we'll let Bill go after you.
I don't know. My artillerist would.
Good question.
Yeah, I think I would want a Goliath artillerist just to carry around these ridiculously large weapons.
Well, you don't have to make them large. Remember, you can have them tiny. They can sit on your shoulder.
Yeah, but I want them big.
Because they're more intimidating that way.
I want to see a lot of stuff kind of be ravaged by it. And you could do that with a teeny tiny little one.
Yep.
But I want that kind of artillerist. I want a battlefield artillerist, not a sneaky one.
Okay.
I want someone who's going to load up his stuff in this massive backpack and
pulls out if you can go on Goliath, it pulls out his Eldritch cannon looking like a pistol.
Yeah.
How about you, Bill?
I was thinking along the lines of like an orc or a half orc carrying this thing around like a shotgun.
Okay, so you're carrying it around like a shotgun. But how would you use? Because I'm doing some theory crafting, and I'll explain what I was getting to, how and why I think the class is still a little overpowered. Still, quick and short. If I was on that world that you said, I'll have the replicate item ability. First of all, I would make 2 bags of holding. I like my bags of holding.
We know.
I would invert one bag over the muzzle of the cannon, have the cannon get as close as it can because it can move on its own.
Yep.
Have it shoot through the bag. What happens?
It depends on the DC of the bag because
there is no DC. It just has an AC and hit points.
Right. So that just means it just fires into the pocket dimension.
No, I have inverted the bag.
Inverted the bag. Oh, okay. I see. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, but I don't know if you can do that.
Yes, you can, because you can pierce the bag from the outside.
Yeah, you can pierce it from the outside, but I don't think you can actually invert it over the...
Yeah.
Because that opens up the plane. The plane opens at the mouth of the bag.
And I really thought about this, because if you take your bag and pull it inside out, all the contents that are in there spill out. The bag is still there, and everything is still around.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now you just created a void. Anything that's around that 10, I think it's 10 feet around, circular, that gets sucked into another dimension. That's why I think this class is overpowered.
See, I got to reread the bags of holding, because I'm thinking the old bags of holding.
So you would march this into, let's say, like a crowd of enemy soldiers and shoot the bag, blowing a hole in it.
And anything running close to it within 10 feet would get sucked in anyways.
Yep. And then...
So on a charge... Your broken bag of holding would devour potentially hundreds of enemies. Yeah, I can.
And then he fires it off. You got to be don't you have to be within 60 feet to set it off?
Yeah, but remember, the void only takes anything within 10 feet.
Right.
So as long as I'm 55 feet away, I can give it the command to detonate.
Right.
I'm safe.
Yeah. That's
Yeah, see, as a game master, I would give it a 120-foot radius.
That's fine. I still sacrifice for my cause.
Yes, you would. Just make sure you went down with it. So I would have to
you
deal
see
with you or your cannon.
But they say when you theory craft like that,
Yeah.
it can potentially damage your DM's game, all the work he did into it.
Yeah, it could, but it really part of running a game is thinking on your toes.
Well, yes, because we tried to do something similar with that with the Beholder that you had put us up against one world, and you had to take a break for a minute and really think about that one. But no, I was like, as much as I really want to like this subclass, and I guess it's really because our world, our homebrew world, is so low magic. I think,
we're a little biased.
Yeah, I mean, outside of that, like I said, if I didn't think like that, setting that you just said would be perfect for this class. I think.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I know I could have a really good time running a game with artificers, and I would go like full 1970s Ralph Bakshi on this.
Yep.
Where the bad guys are just blatantly like Nazi vampire illithids.
Yep.
Right all the way down to like the uniforms. Make them the baddest of bad guys, and just put like World War I era military uniforms on the artificers because, right, why wouldn't they have a uniform? It just look cool.
Right,
They'd have their, and
with
organize
pith
it.
helmets.
Yeah, exactly. Or organize it just like you would like a military organization.
Yep.
Maybe they're a squad or, part of a certain regiment, and they have their own patch and the whatnot. And just do a lot of gritty World War I kind of trench warfare battles with them, but with a fantasy element, where, the enemies have necromancers on hand to reanimate the dead on the battlefield, so you're constantly, unless losing your regiment, and he's got a bag of devouring, that he's eating up the enemies
on the end of a cannon.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about you can, as soon as I blow one up, I can make another one the next day.
Yeah.
And another bag of holding.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's tactics like that would most likely be employed on the battlefield, but you got these necromancers that are raising the dead on the battlefield, for a whole other wave. So it's this terrible, terrible
cycle
war. It's just this war that's probably been going on for 30 or 40 or more years, to the point where, every time one side gains a little bit of ground, they end up losing it. It's a constant back and forth tug of war between the two forces, with these illithids and the allied forces. Maybe have an entire species of D&D peoples wiped out to or close to the brink of extinction, and just have this dark and gritty campaign.
I'm in.
Why did I suddenly just vision carrier pigeons as brownies instead?
Yeah. I mean, that would be right. Why wouldn't you? I mean, you got a choice of brownie or
message
pigeon.
for you, sir.
I'm in.
Corporal, little leave her.
Maybe those brownies are one of those species that are teetering on the edge of extinction, because right, you want to shoot down the brownies.
Yeah.
You don't want them to deliver their messages.
Yep.
So these brownies that grew up in these idyllic fantasy forest settings are now these gritty, scarred up little people with cigars and foul mouths,
buffed out,
with
muscles on them. And stuff.
They're missing limbs and stuff, and they have these little like metal arms, and they're just they're hardcore.
When you're running it,
well, I'm gonna have to get to. I would have to get to writing, but that would be really, really, really fun, and I think you could have a good time with a party of all the same class. If it's done right.
If it's done right, yes. I believe, if you're doing it the way you just depicted it, it would be perfect, I think.
Yeah. You decide which, what function each unit, I guess, performs. And
well, each unit wouldn't be exclusively just one group. So you'd give yourself, because you're going to need your healer, you're going to need your strategist. So if you had a party of 6, 3 of them would be your artillerists. That'd be your front line. and then you'd have your support crew or your leadership and then 2 support.
Yeah, you'd have your battlesmiths.
But the majority of it would be your artillerist, and everything would be because that's what your unit does. Is half or slightly better is that, and then everyone else is, well, you get your leader, and then you have your healer, or in this case it would be your alchemist or something like that.
Armorers,
right? So you'd have one of each of those to help repair things and keep track of everything. But yeah, I could see that. That'd be fun.
We're gonna have to call some friends.
We're gonna have to call some people.
We're gonna have to call some friends and play some games online. I think
everyone gets to build.
Even me.
Everyone but Lou gets to build an artificer. Lou's running the game.
I didn't hear that. My hearing aids turned
I'll
off.
say it louder. I found a way to shut him up.
Not for long.
No. Yeah.
So that's it. That's the Artillerist. That's our take on it. Again, It's only our take. That's how we would use it in a campaign. And again, a big thank you to Doug, who reached out to us a week or 2 ago and had some thoughts on our assessment of the Artificer.
And that's a look at the Artillerist. Stay tuned for next week when we talk about the Battlesmith. That's going to conclude this episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Please subscribe to the podcast for more great content. If you'd like to hear a particular topic, you can reach us on Facebook at the Dungeon Masters Dojo. Or you can drop us an email at thedungeonmastersdojo@gmail.com. Thank you, and have a good day.